Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today I'm covering one of the most powerful and flexible characters in all of Baldur's Gate 3, and indeed in all of Dungeons & Dragons. This character can provide excellent melee damage, excellent tanking, and is almost impossible to kill, incredible control through its spellcasting, and incredible support abilities, both through some of the best support spells in the game, and having some of the best support abilities naturally, just by standing near its allies. You also get awesome out-of-combat utility, providing all of the conversation skills that your party needs, and, if built in certain ways, all of the non-conversation skills that your party needs. This character truly embodies both might and magic, being capable of doing anything and everything all at once, and makes the perfect leader for your party, or main character for your campaign, or just an excellent build for any character that you want to be able to drop into any situation, no matter the circumstances, and have it succeed. I'm talking about the SORCADIN, Paladin and Sorcerer together. These two classes fit extremely naturally with one another because, like all of the charisma classes, they key off the same attribute, but these classes have numerous synergies, providing both damage and tanking from Paladin and incredible spellcasting abilities from Sorcerer, alongside Sorcerer's ability to manipulate the action economy, making your turns incredibly smooth and easy. In fact, this character is so flexible that it's somewhat hard to make a guide for, but in this guide we're going to focus on emphasizing all of the strengths of this class combination and fit as many of the things that this character can do, which is everything, into one character as possible. Before I begin, I do want to quickly mention that, as you can probably hear, I'm on a new microphone. Thank you to everyone who donated and made it possible for me to upgrade. I'm still definitely dialing in the sound quality and sound settings, so please do let me know if you think there's something that I should change, or if there's a part of the video with sound issues. I'd really appreciate you pointing that out so that we can fix it for future videos. Alright, let's get to the build. Although this build is going to lean more heavily into the Paladin end of things than the Sorcerer end of things by the endgame, we're nevertheless going to start with a level of Sorcerer. This character is going to want to concentrate on spells pretty frequently, and so having Sorcerer's access to Constitution save proficiency makes us better at doing that. While we do lose out on heavy armor proficiency from starting with Paladin, we still get medium armor and shields, and because of how we're building this character, we're going to end up in medium armor anyways, so the weapon and armor proficiencies from taking Paladin later in the build are absolutely sufficient, and the con save proficiency is very helpful. For our subclass for Sorcerer, we're going to select Storm Sorcery, because we get access to the Tempestuous Magic feature. This is extremely useful for melee characters to reposition themselves, because you can use it alongside any spell that does not require a spell slot, any ritual spell, in order to gain additional movement speed in a turn, flying movement speed in a turn, in order to position yourself adjacent to enemies. Any turn where you would have dashed or can't reach with a jump, you can use Tempestuous Magic to get to that enemy, and that can help you very easily. You can also reposition away from more dangerous enemies and make sure that you're facing the enemies you actually want to face. So Tempestuous Magic is very helpful for us, just as it is for every Sorcerer build, but even more so for this build. We get to use it both offensively and defensively and make the absolute maximum usage out of this extremely powerful ability. For our ability selection at this level, we're going to take a very unusual split for a Sorcerer, and indeed an unusual split for a Paladin as well. Because we want to be able to do everything with this build, to tank and deal damage, we run into the issue that many Paladin builds run into, that they are multi-attribute dependent, or MAD, meaning that they want many attributes to be high. But this build can actually mitigate that quite significantly thanks to the abilities that we're going to get. You're going to start with one attribute spread and then probably respec to another attribute spread later on. So your starting attribute selection, I recommend taking 16 dexterity and 14 constitution, as well as 16 charisma, assuming that that is if you are planning to do dialogue skills at all. You can also take 16 Constitution and have slightly better access to spell proficiency and hit points if you're worried about the early game as well. And then you put your remaining 12 points into Wisdom to increase your Wisdom saving throws. Once you get access to your Paladin aura that gives you your Charisma to saving throws, we get to reduce that even further. We get to drop our Wisdom down to 8, put our Constitution up to 15, and our Dexterity up to 17, and then of course we will have evened that out with an ability score improvement, which I will show you as we level up, in order to get maximized Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma. Because we will be adding our Charisma to our Wisdom saves, we'll still have decent Wisdom saves, better than other characters would have at this point, and we can increase that even further with items and Paladin's natural immunity to many of the effects that we would care about making Wisdom saves against. So I'm going to continue with this attribute spread as we're leveling up the character, but for the early game, up until you get the Paladin aura, you may want to increase your Wisdom just so that you don't get hit by a really dangerous fear or hold person in the early game and get wiped out. But it won't hurt you if you don't like respecking. It really will not hurt your character if you just start with this attribute spread right from the beginning. For our skill selection, we're going to make sure that we have all of the important dialogue skills, most notably Persuasion, which all sorcerers can take. And then if you are building this character as a custom character, I highly recommend taking a background that gets you sleight of hand proficiency. Since this will be a dexterity-based character, this can also be your lockpicking character and cover all of the skills that you need for the party. So if you start with the Urchin or Charlatan background, then that gets you sleight of hand as well as either stealth or deception, and can make your character even better at handling skills for your party. If you're building this on Minthara, of course, then she can just have all of the dialogue skills, or if you don't want to take lockpicking or have a different character designated as your lockpicker, then you can just go ahead and take all the dialogue skills. This character can be an excellent party face, but the fact that it can do both is one of the really cool things about this character. Finally, for our cantrip selection, we're going to go ahead and pick up Friends. That will let us be even better at dialogue. There's a couple different ways to use this in honor mode. Either only use it against enemies that you are planning to fight anyways, of which there's a few where you can gain a significant advantage, or leave the area or use Disguise Self in order to prevent enemies from catching you for committing prevent characters from catching you for committing the crime of casting Friends on them, and that can allow you to use Friends for free. It's a very powerful ability and one that you should keep in mind. We also want Minor Illusion to group enemies. Pulling enemies away from you can let you get pulling enemies to face away from you can let you get close to them before starting combat, which is pretty useful on melee characters, as well as, of course, this character will have some area of effect spells that you can use with Minor Illusion to group enemies up. Then we want Ray of Frost as an excellent combat ability. This is a great ranged attack in the early game and one that we will use pretty frequently. And for your last ability, last cantrip, I recommend Blade Ward. This character will often be surrounded by enemies, and there will be times when it will be correct to just spend your action casting Blade Ward and tank a lot of incoming hits from enemies, make an opportunity attack, and you can shut down multiple enemy turns by reducing enemy damage with Blade Ward combined with your very high defenses. For our spell selection here, we're going to take Shield, because Shield, of course, is amazing for melee characters. This can, combined with your shield, your actual shield that you can wear, and your high dexterity, can give you some of the highest armor class in the game. And I'm going to suggest taking Magic Missile, because it's just very useful to have an ability that doesn't require you to roll any dice. This can be useful throughout the entire game and just makes an excellent combat ability. You can also pick up other utility spells like Enhanced Leap if you want more mobility, or something like Disguise Self, because the Disguise Self ritual can be used to have your character fly with Tempestuous Magic. You can pick this up or another ritual spell from an item, and that will still allow you to trigger Tempestuous Magic. Also, carrying scrolls is good for this character, but Disguise Self is also an excellent pick. Alright, that is our level 1 build. Let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we're immediately deviating and going to go ahead and take our paladin levels. That gets us proficiency with martial weapons, medium armor, and shields, and so suddenly we're a pretty competent melee fighter, as well as being an excellent spellcaster already at this point in the game. For our Paladin subclass, we're going to take the Oath of the Ancients, because this will let us provide amazing support and utility to our character, and I think that Oath of the Ancients synergizes incredibly well with dexterity-based characters. Overall, it just gives you so many defensive options, and your high initiative allows you to put yourself in the right positions. Also, Healing Radiance is a great ability for any character, but especially a character like this that will be able to be a front line for your party. You can use Healing Radiance to get downed enemies up, you can cast it before combat starts, and you will be taking damage, so you will be very likely to gain back the Healing Radiance abilities, the Healing Radiance health, and get value out of this ability, especially because you multiply any healing that this character receives since you have easy access to Blade Ward. So any healing you receive can be doubled in value if you have Blade Ward active on yourself. So all of those synergies make Healing Radiance a really good ability, and Oath of the Ancients generally is going to help us provide the most value to our party overall. At character level 3, we're going to take a second level of Paladin immediately, because of course we want access to Divine Smite as soon as possible. That's where this character's main damage output comes from, and it gets even more from smites than a normal Paladin build, because our Sorcerer levels give us higher level and more spell slots, so we can smite more times per day, and we can smite harder than a full Paladin build can, because we get access to higher level spell slots. Sorcerer also has access to sorcery points, which you can use to recharge your spell slots or turn lower level spell slots into higher level ones in order to do more burst damage. Anything that refreshes your spells also equals more smites, because you can convert those into sorcery points, convert the sorcery points into spells, and use those spells to deal more damage. So this character is amazing at using Divine Smite, and also can go for longer than most Paladin builds because of the longevity that having more spells and having Sorcerer to easily convert spell slots into the ones that you want offers your character. For our fighting style, we have a lot of different options here, and I think there are 3 that are going to be excellent for this character, and any of them are ones that you can take depending on what you want out of it. To maximize damage, you can use the dueling feature. This character is likely to use a shield and one-handed weapon, although you can also use an offhand weapon, in which case you would take defense. You can also just take defense if you want this character to be as tanky as possible, or if you're trying to solo the game with it, defense is probably the best, just making it even harder for this character to die. But as a party leader, the one that I'm going to recommend is that you take protection. Protection fighting style, I think, is actually heavily underrated in Baldur's Gate 3 character optimization. You rarely see people mention this one, but the ability to, without spending any resources, impose disadvantage on an attack as a reaction is incredibly powerful. This is going to cause a lot of attacks to miss, and combined with the shield spell, effectively gives you shield for yourself and for allies. Protection is worth like -4.5 on average, depending on the exact rolls on the dice that the enemies need, but it's roughly speaking -4 or -4.5. Shield is -5 on the die, and so protection is going to cause attacks to miss your allies significantly, reduce the number of incoming critical hits, and makes this character amazing at shutting down what enemies are trying to do, as well, of course, as just killing them before they actually get to do it. For our spells here, we're going to take Command. Because we have high Charisma, we can land Command pretty easily, and this will be very important later on. And Bless, because this character is going to be making weapon attacks, so sometimes concentrating on Bless is just going to make that much more valuable for you to do. Then you're going to take Thunderous Smite. It's the best of the Smite spells, and you can layer this on top of a normal Smite attack. If you have Smite set to use as a reaction in your character sheet, you activate Thunderous Smite, add another Smite on top of it. It costs you 2 spell slots, but it does a ton of damage and knocks enemies prone. Again, because we've actually taken slightly higher Charisma, the Thunderous Smite save DC on knocking enemies prone is going to be very high, and so that's pretty good. After that, there's less that is super important for this character to have. Those 3 are critical, but the others are a little less so. I recommend taking Shield of Faith because you can concentrate on this all day, and even higher armor class is good. So if you have a way to restore a level 1 spell slot, this is a good thing to just have concentrated on all day, and this character's good at maintaining concentration, so it's likely to last for a lot of the day. And probably Protection from Evil and Good, because this comes up occasionally and you just want situational spells. Most of your first level spells are going to be used on smites or shields, but any spell that has a powerful effect in certain encounters can be useful to have, so we're just going to prepare it. Now, at character level 4, we actually have a number of different directions that we could take this character in, and they would all be fine. This is going to depend a little bit on the makeup of your party, which direction you take your character in next. More Paladin levels or more Sorcerer levels. Do you need more spell progression? If your party is light on spellcasters, you could take your Sorcerer levels first. If you need more melee damage and up front and frontline, then you could take your Paladin levels first. Both of them are totally viable builds, and this is something that I really want to emphasize, is just how flexible this character is in terms of your progression. You have a lot of room for customization here. If there are things about this build that you want to change, you can do so without reducing its effectiveness significantly at all. For this version of the build, we're going to continue to take Paladin spells, because this will give us just some of the most powerful choices for our... This will give us early access to more damage. We're going to increase our number of smites through extra attack, and just make this character a little more survivable because of Paladin's higher hit point gain. So I think that the Paladin first is slightly smoother in terms of playing through the game, but both are absolutely viable progressions, and it'll just change a little bit on whether you're emphasizing your frontline capabilities or emphasizing your spell casting. So we're going to take Paladin level 3, and one thing that you get from taking Ancients Paladin is you get the Speak with Animals spell, which is a ritual spell, so you can cast it without spending a spell slot. This is, remember, free flying, so at level 4, even if we didn't take Disguise Self at level 1, we get access to free flight from Tempestuous Magic, which we can use without spending spell slots on it. We also get access to Nature's Wrath and Turn the Faithless, and normally for Paladins these are relatively difficult abilities to use because the save DCs on them will be pretty low, but this character took higher Charisma, so the save DCs on these abilities are still pretty respectable, and restraining an enemy is a very powerful ability, absolutely worth a Channel Oath charge. So this is one to keep in mind as being very relevant throughout the game, as long as you can keep the save up, and this character does do that, so you get access to this ability that many characters struggle to use, and it's very good. At level 5, we're going to get access to our first feat, and of course we're going to use it to even out our ability scores here. If we took this starting attribute spread, if you're still in the previous attribute spread, because we don't yet have our Paladin aura, then you just add 2 points to your dexterity to get to 18, but this way we can go up to 18 dexterity and 16 constitution, making sure that we are winning initiative, have good armor class, and have decent HP and constitution saves, so we can maintain concentration on our spells throughout the game. We, at level 4 Paladin, count as a second level spellcaster, so we also get access to level 2 spell slots. We don't yet know any second level spells, but we have level 2 spell slots, which we can now spend on smites, because we have 2 spellcasting levels from our 4 levels of Paladin, and 1 spellcasting level from our Sorcerer, so we count as being a 3rd level spellcaster, and can use our 2nd level spells for even more damage. And then we get to Paladin level 5 and get access to extra attack, as well as Misty Step, which is even more mobility. This character needs Misty Step less than many other characters, who of course are desperate to have Misty Step in every build, because it's just such a powerful positioning tool. But it's still very good for you to have access to it. You won't use it all the time, because often Tempestuous Flight will be good enough, but Misty Step is still great for important mobility whenever you need to move around the field a little bit more. At level 2, we don't get any spells that are hugely impactful from our Paladin levels, other than Misty Step itself, of course. But you can prepare something like Lesser Restoration, which can come up as a useful panic button when an ally is paralyzed. Being able to remove that from them is very useful. And something like Protection from Poison, because it is situationally helpful in certain encounters. Magic Weapon is another spell that we could concentrate on all day, and if you have spare spell slots or ways to restore your spell slot through items, then Magic Weapon is an excellent one to concentrate on all day. If you're looking for a more offensive setup, it can replace Shield of Faith. If you're looking for a spell to maintain concentration on, you can also just use Bless in combat to actually land your spells and help out your allies. Character level 7. We have, again, another breakpoint here where we could split off and take additional Sorcerer levels, or we could continue to take more Paladin levels. In this case, I'm going to recommend taking another Paladin level, because it gets you Aura of Protection, which gives you and all your allies a +3 bonus to your saving throws from your Charisma. I know the tooltip is broken here and it says +0, but the actual number is your Charisma bonus, so because we have 16 charisma, we and our allies will get +3 to all of our saving throws. That, combined with our defensive capabilities from protection, from shield, make us incredibly hard for enemies to deal with. Even with only 8 wisdom, we will still have a decent wisdom saving throw, and that's really the only weakness of this character, which we can mitigate even further, of course, with items and spellcasting utility, especially because some of the most common things that target wisdom are fears, which we can become immune to. Then we're going to go to Paladin level 7 because we want to get access to Aura of Warding, giving us half damage from enemy spellcasting. Because we have Aura of Protection, increasing our dexterity saves and our dexterity-based character, so we're going to have even higher dexterity saving throws. We will almost always succeed on our dex saves against damaging spells. A lot of damaging spells let you roll a dexterity save to take half damage, and then we take half damage even further from Aura of Warding, so we're more or less immune to enemy AoE spells on this character. Taking only a quarter damage means enemies have almost entirely wasted their action. If they cast a fireball on this character, we dodge it, and then we take half damage even after that, leaving us able to heal it back up in a single bonus action with a lowly healing potion or anything along those lines. It just makes this character and your entire party, so much tankier. Now that we've gotten this far in our Paladin levels, let's go ahead and start taking some Sorcerer levels. At Sorcerer level 2, we immediately get access to Sorcerer Meta Magic, which is awesome, because it's going to, not only does it give us additional Sorcerer Meta Magic, it also gives us access to the Create Sorcery Points and Create Spell Slots actions, which let us convert spell slots into other spell slots. You can lose a spell slot to turn it into sorcery points and then turn it back into spell slots by using Create spells. So you can effectively turn lower level slots into higher level ones in order to do more burst damage, or higher level ones into lower level ones to have more longevity for your character, whatever you need. This is especially potent when combined with ways to restore your spell slots, items or elixirs of arcane cultivation that could give you back your spell slots. You can convert them to sorcery points and then use those sorcery points for even more smites. We're of course going to take Twin Spell as our meta magic. This one's basically mandatory and just incredibly powerful overall. But while often I recommend Distant Spell as our second meta magic on Sorcerer, on this character we're going to take Extended Spell because we have Command. command normally lasts for 1 turn, and extended command takes an enemy out of the fight for 2 turns without any requiring concentration, so is just an incredibly powerful effect. You can cast it at higher levels to hit multiple enemies and just drop the entire encounter for 2 turns with extended meta magic. So it's just amazing on Paladin Sorcerer hybrids or on Warlock Sorcerer hybrids because command works so well with extended spell. For the spell that we're learning here, we can just take any utility spell. Something like Fog Cloud or Enhance Leap could be pretty useful to this character. You can also just take Disguise Self if you don't have another way to use it just for social interactions as well. It can be very useful, though of course there are plenty of other ways to grab this. So I'm going to recommend taking Fog Cloud because it's still useful even on into the late game as a no-save blind, but any of these utility spells will be fine. Basically, at this point, you're just using all of these level 1 spells for smites or shields, though. At Sorcerer level 3, we get access to 2nd level Sorcerer spells, as well as our first meta magic. For our spell selection, I think there are 3 main options, and this will depend a little on the role of your character and on your itemization up to this point. If you are going for Arcane Acuity stacking, which is something this character is excellent at, with the Helm of Arcane Acuity, you can make your spells land more easily every time you hit an enemy with a weapon attack, which we're going to be doing constantly. And so in that case, we would want to take Hold Person, because if you can land Hold Person, it's devastating, and the save DC would be very, very high. If you aren't doing that, your best combat option is probably still Cloud of Daggers, even this late in the game. It's an excellent spell that just gives you a lot of optionality for your combats, because it has no saving throw, it's AoE, and just can be excellent damage to finish off a low health enemy, or alternatively you could take Enhanceability for out of combat utility. I'm going to recommend taking Hold Person. I think it's the most powerful of these regardless, but all 3 of those are excellent options. You can also replace a spell if you're not using one of these lower level spells. Fog Cloud is the most likely culprit, so I'm going to recommend replacing Fog Cloud and just grabbing Cloud of Daggers because I think it's going to come up more often, or Enhanceability if you don't have that elsewhere in your party. For our meta magic, we actually also have a choice, which is very unusual for level 3 Sorcerer, who almost 100% of the time wants to take Quicken Spell. However, this character can already get Quicken Spell effectively through itemization. If you're using the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, that will allow you to make a weapon attack, to cast an illusion or enchantment spell as a bonus action after making a weapon attack, which is the same as Quicken Spell. We're going to be making weapon attacks every turn, so we will always be able to use that ability, and illusion and enchantment spells include our most important spells to actually land on enemies, Hold Person and Command, so we don't need Quicken Spell if we're using that item. In that case, we can actually take Heightened Spell, which is an incredible meta magic that almost never sees use because Quicken Spell is just so unbelievably broken. But Heightened Spell, giving enemies disadvantage on the saving throws, is amazing for landing the very important spells, and makes Hold Person and Command so much easier to land, even with relatively low charisma for this point in the game, that you can almost guarantee taking enemies out of the fight, even if you're not stacking Arcane Acuity, and if you are, Heightened Spell absolutely guarantees they'll fail the saving throws, and lets this character not only output amazing damage, but just shut enemies down guaranteed. So for this version of the character, which will be using those items, I'm going to actually select Heightened Spell over Quicken Spell, but both are possible, and if you are opposed to using Arcane Acuity, which I don't blame you for because it's a little too powerful for the game that it's in, then Quicken Spell is still an amazing option, as indeed it always is. At Sorcerer level 4, we get access to a feat, and we're just going to go ahead and max out our dexterity so that we can land our attacks much more easily. You can take a couple other options here. Alert would always be fine. You could take Dual Wielder if you've gone for multiple weapons rather than a one-handed weapon and shield would be okay, but overall I think you're best off just maximizing your dexterity because dexterity is a great stat and you want more of it. For our cantrip selection here, we are of course going to take the only cantrip we have that we still desperately need, True Strike, to make sure that we can annoy haters in the YouTube comments. And then for our spell selection, we're going to take the last of the 3 utility level 2 spells that I mentioned, picking up Enhance Ability. Remember, again, you can go back for other utility spells like Disguise Self or Enhance Sleep if there's any of these you find yourself, or Invisibility, if there's any of these spells you find yourself not using. Finally, at Sorcerer level 5, we have maxed out our character, gained a second, 4th level spell slot, so we have enough smites to make enough high-level smites to obliterate enemies. We can at least make 2 4th level smites in a single turn with our extra attack, which, if you can find ways to guarantee criticals, will take pretty much any enemy out of the game all by itself, but also just adds amazing damage and burst potential to this character. And we get access to a 3rd level spell. The 3rd level spell that I'm going to recommend that you take is Haste. We can also take stuff like Hypnotic Pattern, an illusion spell that you can use as a bonus action with Arcane Acuity, and I'm going to recommend that you replace Cloud of Daggers with Hypnotic Pattern for AoE spells. But Haste is just so good for any combat in which you are not the character that is doing most of your damage, and you can twin cast Haste if you took Twin Spell, which we did, on 2 party members, so you can gain a ton of benefit from that. We're also very, very good at maintaining concentration, so you can Twin Spell Haste on yourself and another party member very safely. You're very unlikely to lose concentration and get stunned, because your saving throws are plus 10 at this point to your con saving throw, the 7 listed, plus 3 from our charisma, plus any additional bonuses that we get, so it's very hard for us to actually drop concentration. Alright, my friends, that is the build for the SORCADIN. Hope that you have enjoyed this, but of course we can make it more powerful through itemization, so let's talk about that. For items for this character, there's a few things that you're looking for in order to maximize the power of your character. Obviously, I've already mentioned the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. Whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, you gain Arcane Acuity for 2 turns, and that makes your spells land much more easily. You can attack twice because you have extra attack without having any other buffs like Bloodlust or Haste or anything like that, and that gives you 4 points of Arcane Acuity, which makes your spells extremely likely to land. And then you can use the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel to cast Command or Hold Person or Hypnotic Pattern as a bonus action alongside that Arcane Acuity buff to absolutely wipe the floor with enemies. We're also looking for anything that increases our initiative, because while we're a dexterity-based character and have +5, we don't have alert, so we just want a small amount of initiative boost in order to increase our character's ability to go first in combat, which is very important. With even a small boost, we go before just about every enemy guaranteed, so you can use the Sentinel Shield for a +3, or any other initiative boost that doesn't take up an important slot will be fine for this character. For weapons for this character, you of course need a finesse weapon, so anything with the finesse weapon tag in your main hand is very important. And the Knife of the Undermountain King can improve our critical hit chance, which is very good. Obviously, this is a smite build, so doubling our smite damage on a critical hit is powerful. Anything that increases our critical hits is very useful as a result. Or we can also use Folar Eluve to continue to buff our party members and to do even more damage ourselves. For our armor, we're looking for one of the medium armors with uncapped dexterity, because that lets you add your full dexterity modifier to your armor class. With that and a shield, the Yuan-Ti Scale Mail, or the Armor of Agility and a shield, plus the shield spell, we can have AC easily in the mid 20s and up to 30s. When we cast shield, you can increase your saves and armor class even further with something like the Cloak of Protection. And of course, I would be remiss not to mention that the stat items can help you increase your charisma even further. So if you want to use the Gloves of Dexterity or the Elixirs of Strength on this character, you can then get away with not having to put feats in Wisdom and instead raise your charisma to maximum, which will be good for dialogue skills as well as landing your spells, even without using Arcane Acuity. So these attribute items will let this character be even more powerful and even more flexible in between the two roles, though they're absolutely not required for the build. Other than that, you are mostly looking for things that improve your critical hit chance, because critical hitting with smite attacks is very good, and anything that guarantees a critical, like the Killer's Sweetheart, or for Illithid powers, the Luck of the Far Realms Illithid power, which you can get here, that allow you to guarantee critical hits, can turn your smites into extremely powerful and high damage critical burst effects. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the SORCADIN. This is one of the characters that I think is perfect for any party face or any main character. It just does everything that you could possibly want and will let you experience the game in basically the entirety of the game, all in a single character, and it's flexible, powerful, fun to play, easy to customize if you want to change anything about it. If you have enjoyed the video, definitely leave a comment, because that helps me out with the algorithm, and hit the like button, which I do appreciate people taking the time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 videos and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, my friends, and I'll catch you next time.